Jesus,
right here.
right here in my heart. I'm alive and living, all because I'm forgiven. I got Jesus,
Right here.
right here in my heart. I love the thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. Love the thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. What a sight just to see all the happy faces praising God in heavenly places. What a thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. Plenty of room in the family, room for the young and the old. Plenty of happiness, plenty of love, plenty of room in the fold. Plenty of room in the family,
Well, there's
room for the young and the old. Plenty of happiness, plenty of love, plenty of room in the fold. I'm so glad I'm a part of the family of God. I've been washed in the fountain, cleansed by His blood. Join hands with Jesus as we travel this side. For I'm part of the family of God.
You will notice we say brother and sister around here. Well, it's because we're a family, guys, and these folks are so dear. When one has a party, we all shed a tear and rejoice in His victory in this family so dear. Everyone,
I'm so glad I'm a part of the family of God. I've been washed in the fountain, cleansed by His blood. Join hands with Jesus as we travel this side. For I'm part of the family of
There's no need in standing up for the right unless you're gonna stand up against the wrong. Tell me how you gonna ever stop being weak unless you make your mind up to be strong. Well, you got to do right, 'cause it won't be long. It won't be long.
Ba-bow, bow, bow, ba-bow, bow, bow, ba-bow, bow, bow, ba-bow, bow, bow.
Well, let me tell you that it's easy to hate your enemies, and it's just as easy to love your friends. They tell me you will have to love alike. The Bible tells you you got to let the love of God come in. Well, you got to do right, 'cause it won't be long. It won't be long. Don't you wanna love Him better? Don't you wanna love Him more?
you wanna be?
Haste to meet your maker before you got to deal with the undertaker. He will take you right now if you are willing. Don't you know the Bible is fulfilling? Well, you got to do right, 'cause it won't be long. It won't be long. You got to do right, 'cause it won't be long. It won't be long.
You gotta do right, whoa, ho, live the life. You got to do right, whoa, ho, live the life.
You got to do right, oh, oh, live the life. Well, you got to do right, oh, oh, live the life. You got to do right, oh, oh, live the life. You got to do right,
Bow, bow, bow.
Don't you wanna love him better? Don't you wanna love him more? Can't you hear the Savior knocking? He's a knocking at your door.
Don't you wanna be?
Ways to meet your maker before you got to deal with the undertaker. He will take you right now if you are willing. Don't you know the Bible is fulfilled? Well, you got to do. Cause it won't be long. It won't be long. You got to do right. Cause it won't be long. It won't be long.
You gotta do right, whoa, ho, live the life. You got to do right, whoa, ho, live the life.
You got to do right. Oh, live the life. Well, you got to do right. Oh, live the life. You got to do right. Oh, live the life. You got to do right.
Let's sing this song together, side by side. Join hands together.
Side by side we stand, waiting God's command, worshiping the saving King, living by His grace. And moving out in faith, Jesus will see us through.
Meet me in heaven.
Good morning once again. It is now 10:29. You know, in Africa, but we want to work with the real time. It's 10:29, and those who are still outside, please come in so that we may begin. We've had two wonderful presentations so far. We are just about to have the next two ones. And I believe that it will be interesting as well. We are being rekindled to the old missionary spirit. Our next presenter is Dr. Adelowo Adetunji. Dr. Adelowo is an ordained minister of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Nigeria. He is also a professor of comparative religion that includes Christianity, Islam, and African traditional religion. He has several publications in reputable journals. I will invite Dr. Adelowo to come to the pulpit and share with us what he has in his mind. Please, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, all. Well, I thank God for the privilege to be here. And I'll just go straight so that we can move as fast as possible. The title, 150 Years of Adventist Mission in Africa, the Challenges and Prospects in World's Accounts. Well, WAD is one of the 13 world divisions that we have in the General Conference. It has gone through a lot of reorganization before finally in 2003, that name WAD, really came up. Oh, that's the picture you have there. There's echo from somewhere. Was it disconnected? It was not showing. Before I came in.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the title there. Then it was one of the 13 divisions that we have. It has gone through a lot of the organization before finally in 2003 came up with the name WAD, West Central African Division. We have countries that are under this, this division. And then our leaders from there. Can I share with us the Ellen White's burden for foreign and home mission? And saying here, say no time for delay. Time is short. We need workers are needed everywhere. That there should be where there's one here that's, or maybe where there should be hundreds, we have only one. And there's urgent need for dedicated workers. Then say calls are coming from everywhere, from all the directions, from those who are interested in reading a publication, and saying that people are calling, that ministers should be sent. Many are even satisfied to have the paper, maybe like a tracts, if they could not have the living preachers as presented each year. So you can see the desire. Talking about our literatures as silent messengers, it says one of the church outreach method to reach other lands since 1850s through biblical literature. The available ministers at home say they are overworked, underpaid, and inadequate, even to meet the needs that they have at home. So you can see how she was just yearning that things should move faster than how it was. So at the time, captains of ships were paid so that they go along with tracts as they move along the coast of West Africa to drop them. And that really happened from time to time. And I have it here that George Drew was one of those who practiced that. Here you have Anna Moore in West Africa. And I say a stranger with a strange message. This woman belongs to another Christian body, another Christian denomination, but he was serving in Sierra Leone. He went for a holiday, and S.N. Haskell gave him a copy of one of the books written by J.N. Andrew on the history of Sabbath. This woman went through, and she was convinced of the Sabbath. And she started sharing what she believed. So returned back to Liberia. She left from Sierra Leone, but moved back to Liberia, and was, sharing what she had. As you will also agree with me, the expectation is that the church that employ her will not allow to continue. So she was relieved of her assignments, but that did not really discourage her, because I told her by the time she was even writing in the Review and Herald in January 2, 1864, she has converted another person. And before she left, she dropped these literatures, these tracts, in some of the stations of her colleagues all around before she left. So you see it here that she started the work like someone put it, that's the time that even the Adventist message has not gotten to some land, but we had it in Africa. The writer of the book, Maxwell, tell it to the world. Says just like as the baby Jesus was brought to Africa before he was taken to Europe. It's the same way we had the message here, even before it got to some other parts of the world. But then while I was saying here that, yes, this literature can do a lot and really achieve a lot for us as a church. As you see, that's one of the trends I discovered, that in most places, we make use of our publications. But then I say, yes, there will also be need for the living preachers to walk along with with whatever that is achieved through the literature. Now, in 1892, the General Conference decided to send Elder Lawrence Chadwick to come and survey the West Africa sub-region, the possibility of beginning the work there. And he came to Accra, Gold Coast. By the time he got there, he was received by Francis I.U. Dauphin, by some people. We had some people already with him, and they welcomed him. While he was there in Sierra Leone, there was also another man, Coker, with his own group also waiting for him. And in Liberia, we have Gustin also waiting for him. You agree with me that he was coming to check, was not even coming as a missionary to begin to preach. But there are about 3 groups already waiting for him. The question is, how do they get this message? It was through this literature, tracts that are sent. Verse 1 concluded, said, only God could say how far the message went. Because since the captains were paid at will as they travel along the coast, they drop, from time to time from one place to another. Then he went back and gave the reports. We believe that the reports given was positive. And therefore, the first group of official missionaries was sent to Gold Coast. That was Ghana. And we have K.G. Rudolph and E.L. Stanford. They came and they stayed there just to preach, but things were not really easy for them. On October 3, 1895, another group also was sent. We have D.U. Hale and G.P. Riggs. Hale was the leader of the group. Riggs was one of them. He was a literature evangelist. And we have George Kerr and his wife, who are nurses. So if you look at the trend now, a group that came, you have a preacher, you have a literature evangelist, and you also have the one that can engage in medical missionaries. And that has been the trend. Now, the leader here, Hale, wrote in Review and Herald, trying to give testimonies of the way the Lord has been with them. Say our health, generally speaking, has been very good since 1st of February. Brakel has had almost perfect health, but Sister Kerr was sick quite a while. It has been 62 days since I have had any malaria fever. I attribute this to the divine grace. And so it was giving the testimony of the way God was really taking care of them in the midst, in a strange land, and, on and on like that. So we often think that's just so wonderful for 5 white men to be together for such a long period, and none of them really was struck down by death. It was like a miracle. So how wonderful is that? When we remember that last year there were 38 deaths out of 40 white people in Cape Coast. 38 out of 40. And here they were, about 5 of them, they were healthy and healthy, everything was okay with them. So they were just looking at it that way. But it's as if his testimony invited strategies. There are a lot of things that are coming. On July 4, 1896, little William Kerr, their child that they came with, died of dysentery. 4 months later, you have another child of the same family, also died. July 1896, Elder Hale himself suffered an attack of the black water fever. Because he survived, so the local people, they look at him like Lazarus that was raised back from death. Because they wonder how you survived this. So he was moving around the people, come and see that man, things like that. It was just so wonderful. So Rick Ark dysentery, he was hospitalized in Liverpool and died again. Another one died, January 8th, 1897. Mr. Sonvide, also the Wesleyan white man, also along the coast, had the same, like what he did and what happened to him, and he also died. George and Eva Kerr sailed. They moved from, they moved to Liverpool, maybe because of the incessant attack, but they also suffered that this Blackwater attack. So Hale also had to sail to England on June 3, 1897. He recovered and returned, but she was forced to go back because of the sickness. So that was when Babcock was asked to come, and then he replaced Hale in 1905. He came with his third wife and their children. Coming with the third wife, that was to tell you a story. Definitely, he did not marry 3 at a time. So it means he has lost 2 wives, but not tired, got another one, and he came to Africa. He came to Africa again. So in 1908, 2 new missionaries, Thomas and Catherine French, were also sent to join Babcock. Both of them were teachers, and they were working in Freetown, in the missionary, to train missionaries. Late in 1910, they were transferred to Haxim, another one of these places in Ghana, where the church is also coming up. But has continued that way. When you read ahead, you will see again that the wife, Catherine, also died. And it was, so C.F.E. Thompson and his wife, they replaced Catherine and the wife in Haxim, and they continued that way. Thompson and his wife, they thought these are Jamaican because they are black race. They thought they would have resistance to this terrible disease that is claiming, their life. Unfortunately, Thompson also died. So they say it was not only a teacher, but also an evangelist. That's in a program in Haxim, he won 30 souls, at a time. No wonder when one of the General Conference presidents called West African Coast the white man's grave, because many of them really died. Many of them really died. But they didn't give up. The missionaries still, determined to go, irrespective of what was really happening. They decided to continue. W.H. Lewis and another one here were told also decided to come to Gold Coast. Why David Babcock took the message to Western Nigeria, and J.C. Clifford also took the message to Eastern Nigeria, and J.J. Hyde to Northern Nigeria. So they didn't give up, in spite of all that was really happening to them. Now, Maxwell, the writer of the book Tell It to the World, said, to tell the story of Adventism in each new country, and I want to say in each union in world, will literally require many volumes. because everywhere you have somebody that's as important as Joseph Bates. So it means it is not practically possible within this period given to cover all the 10 unions that I have in Ward. But I'll just speak some of them. Adventism in Ghana, like what we said the other time, the method of giving tracts to ship captains to drop all along also worked the miracle in Ghana, because a tract that was dropped, Francis Dauphin picked one of such tracts and he read it and was convinced of the Sabbath. You remember, like what I said the other time, by the time the missionary that was sent by GC to come and survey came, he has already gathered some people already around with him that he welcomed that man. On 3rd of October in 1895, Cape Coast became the official headquarters of the church in West Africa. But I just want to say concerning maybe something went wrong. It's okay. ICT, will you? Something is not moving on well. It's okay. Thank God it's back. So Dauphin was believed to pick some of this tract, and then he studied and was convinced about the Sabbath. And he started, preaching. But along with that, the history of how Adventism got to Ghana was really becoming, I don't know whether I say controversial, because there was another one, William Dawson of Faith Church. That thing is not responding. Maybe I'll continue. It's okay. Dawson. So now we have Dauphin. We have Dawson. So the common and the official record that we have was that it was Dauphin that introduced Adventism to Ghana through the tracts. But there's another version of the Dawson of Fete that is also mentioned there, that this one there are two versions concerning his own encounter with Adventism. Some are saying that, Pastor Babala said he schooled in Waterloo, in Sierra Leone, and that was where he came across Adventism. But his people, and that was also corroborated when I visited the place in 2018, they believed that he was a slave. He was bought as a slave. But because he was like he had a light skin, the slave master, instead of treating him like a slave, they decided to train him in business. And therefore, he was not treated as a slave. So you engage in business, running from US to Ghana and other parts of the. So he got the message, and then he brought it home to his own place called Fete there. He started preaching there. In fact, some believe that that he also helped Dolphin in understanding the message. At the time, he moved from Fete and bought another piece of land, where he built he built a church. I will see it here. He built a church, and then now it's not moving as I'm moving. Well, he built a church in another land, just very close to Fete, Mayenda. He bought a land there. He built a church, and when I visited the place, when you see the furniture that you have there, they are just very close to the type that you have in Battle Creek. You know that they were not made here they were not made in Nigeria. So that's also an evidence that he was moving up and down. So he built a church, and then he has a mission house beside that, all along. So some believe that he was the one that brought Adventism to Ghana originally, that he even helped Dolphin in understanding the message. Maybe there's another person here, the Grant that was also mentioned here, that's how that individual also got the message about Adventism. Nobody was sure about when, where, how of his encounter with Adventism. I think it was from that Professor Wissu-Mensah continued and said, well, it will be a waste of energy and efforts to look for the one that brought Adventism to Ghana. One thing we are sure of, Adventism got to Ghana. And I think he said we should be settled with that. So apart from Dolphin and Dawson, we also have another man that's Christian Abraham Aka, was one of those that were converted also early in Ghana. And he moved to his home place, Kikam, and worked vigorously, won many souls, that the church got organized, and some were also maybe the first one to be. When the missionary that came to Ghana baptized 4 individuals at a time, Dolphin, and I think 2 or 3 of his children, making 3 of them, making 3. So the 4th person that was baptized in Ghana was this Akan. So he also worked very vigorously, and a lot of people were converted from the land. That he also took joined hand with others, took the message to northern Ghana, the Ashanti region, and he also found favor of the chief there, who also gave them a land to build a church, and they have an extensive school. I was also opportune to be there. So that was how the message moved around. So, this is not moving at my own pace here. But if you see, there's a picture that was taken, a location where they believe that Dolphin received the tract or picked the tract. There was a monument there of our hands, holding a scroll. I was also opportune to be there. So that's for the Apan church where Dolphin was attending. After some times, we were told that could not really survive very well. But as of the time we went there, they were constructing a very big auditorium for the church, and we had a meeting, and that's in that place. Hayford of Sekondi, Ghana. It's another one that his conversion was also, one was not sure how he got converted. But by the time that the missionary was coming, to Ghana, he was one of those that received him in Sekondi, in Ghana. And then together they traveled to Akron, where the church was also flourishing. So these individuals, in one way or the other, they got in contact with the message, and they were really spreading it. I mentioned already that Professor Wusu-Mensah said it will be a waste of effort because no one is even sure who got it first, and brought it to Ghana. Then we moved to the Western Nigeria. Now, when Babcock left Sierra Leone, he went to Nigeria. And getting to Nigeria, he stayed a while with the white man who was like in Lagos for some time. And from there, he journeyed northward with train and tried to survey some of the community that are located along the rail line. He went as far as the Kaduna and then before returning back. But he finally settled at a place we called Erumu, very close to Ibadan. And there he was received by the chief there. They were happy to have him around, and they really supported him. That he dug a well there. He also started a local school where some of the people were also working with him. When he was going, he went with two individuals, one Ghanaian and then another Sierra Leonean. They were in his team when they went there. So it was from Erumu that they moved to when they are getting established in Erumu, they have a school there, and some of the boys, the young men that went with him, and the one that they were able to work with around the community there. So they have some of them. Exactly, the son of the chief himself, Samuel Oyeniyi Oyeleshe, he was able to speak English bit by bit. He was able to speak Hausa, and then was able to act as interpreter for Babcock. So they moved upward and got to Ilorin. And when he got to Ilorin, he also met the white man there who was in charge of the area, of the province, making the request. That's why he was visiting to establish a church. But as we see in some of the places where they went to, there was this territorial agreement that the colonial master had with the emirs, that they would not intervene with their religion. So when Babcock got to Ilorin and explained his mission to the colonial man there, he said, that would not be allowed. It was rather directed to go to Shao, because Ilorin has not been able to Islamize Shao. They are about 7 miles apart, but they are not able to Islamize Shao. So it's like, say, we have a religion here, but there's a place there. They don't have any religion. Go there. So Babcock went to Shao, and that happened to be my place. And there he was received. And one special thing that also happened, that the head of the community and his chief decided to donate, in quotes, a male child each for him to begin his church. So he did not begin by preaching around. each of them said, this is my own, this is my own. So they gather, and they asked him to begin in the palace. So he started the church in the palace. And, it was a very wonderful reception that they gave to him. So he started the church, and from there, other places, people are inviting him to come to other places. He established a school in Chao that became the training center for some of our church workers. And many from there also learned a lot. So he had that school there, and once in a while also, applying the medical aspects of outreach, to win some people. And it was from there that calls were coming. He moved from there to Ipoti, where, because of the message, some in another denomination they just moved en masse to join Seventh-day Adventist Church. And from there, you have the missionary activity getting extended from time to time. At the time, he went to lay a foundation in Ipoti, June 1917. And, like what a source said, pressure mixed with excitement, broke him down. And he was sick. He also moved to Osogbo, and from Osogbo to Lagos, where his family joined him, and then traveled back to United States of America. And that was how, so Mark Clements came to replace him and then to join hand with him. His own activity and then his assignments, the school in Chao suffered a little setback because other parts, like Otsun Ekiti, are also accepting the faith, and things are getting better that side. And that was how the movement and the activity of Babcock and those that worked around him, really had. Now from there, we'll move to the eastern parts of the country. Like what I was saying, in the case of Ghana, the issue of who brought Adventism to eastern part of Nigeria was also, had some issue. Yes, because we have a man that is called Inaku. Edmund Inaku. There are two versions concerning the case of this man too. One was the fact that Professor Babalola said he studied in Waterloo. And that was where he came across Adventist faith. But there's also another account that said he was a prisoner in Ghana. And that was where J.J. Hyde met with him. So whether in Ghana or in Waterloo, he came across J.J. Hyde. And after he was set free, or he finished his term of service in Ghana, he returned to his people at Aboa, and there he started preaching the Adventist message. Now, by the time J.J. Hyde was looking for him, he got information that he has returned home. So J.J. Hyde went to Nigeria and located him in Aboa, but already he has few people that are already, worshiping with him. And from there, they united again, and they were happy that they were able to be together. So from there, some people believe that it was Edmund Naku that brought Adventism to Eastern Nigeria. Yes, he got the message from J.J. Hyde, but he had started the work before the arrival of J.J. Hyde in Nigeria. But like what they say about Ghana, I think the most important thing was that the work started in the eastern parts of Nigeria. So when JJI finally came, he started and then was preaching around that place, Elele and others, very close to Abua. And he moved to Aba. And in getting to Aba, he tried to locate offices where he would drop tracts. So you can see this sort of tract again coming up. And fortunately, he got some teachers in the government college that we have in Aba. And there, he was able to, dialogue with them, and they accepted the tracts. So from there, they were spreading, also the tracts. He was also preaching, and the tracts were also, going along and then doing the silent work, from time to time. And then one important student that was one who always remember when it comes to his work there was the one we call Philip Onwere. Philip Onwere was one of the students in Aba Government School. He studied one of the tracts and studied the Bible himself and was convinced that the Sabbath was the right one. There was also an elderly man, a lecturer there, that was also called Dede, who also encouraged students, and then he helped them in understanding and giving them the conviction that Sabbath was on Saturday, or Saturday is the Sabbath day of the Lord. So Onwere became maybe a useful hand in the hand, working together with J.J. Hyde. He was the first translator and interpreter, in Igbo land. So he was able to, with him, they were able to reach out to the local people around there. So Onwere and others, they worked together, and the work was also moving on fine. Then Clifford for being missing, Clifford was the one for Eastern Nigeria. J.J. Hyde was the one for Northern Nigeria. So J.J. Hyde also moved to Northern Nigeria. I think he also moved from Sierra Leone to Northern Nigeria, and there he started preaching. But he could not start immediately. Like what I said the other time, there is unwritten territorial agreement. Two in his own case. There are two in his own case. The colonial master agreed with the emirs not to tamper with their religion. So any of their colleagues that come from outside, they will not allow them to stay where Islam was already in existence. Then there was another territorial arrangement within the Christians themselves that will avoid conflict. If you get to a place and one denomination is there already, you should not stay there. You look for another place. So by the time J.J. Hyde got to the north, areas where he was trying to begin his work, he was not allowed because of these two unwritten laws that are already in existence. And that was really what led him to Jengri, where they are like maybe traditionalists. There have never been any Christian missionary there, nor were they Muslims. So he was able to stay there, and he started his work there, himself and his wife. So they started preaching. There was also an outbreak of a disease then. So the wife was also working as a nurse. So as they preached, they also, as much as possible, to reach out to people. It was around that time, too, that those that are working on the translation of Hausa Bible completed it. And that also served as a tool in his hand. So as people are coming to receive treatment, you'll be speaking to them, the little that he understood. Say, if he wanted to use a particular word and was not sure of, I know that a word like that was used in the Bible, you go to that text, the Hausa Bible, and look at the way, what that will mean in Hausa. We pronounce it to communicate with the patient that was treating. And they will correct him, say, no, you should call this way. So by that, he was interacting with them, and also, won a lot of souls. his son, one of his sons that went with him, later was, became a medical doctor, and that one also joined him in the ministry, and things were really moving on there. Now, in the northern parts of the country, the Kakwe was a very important figure when it comes to Adventism in the northern parts. Around that Jengri, the Kakwe was, the man himself was the first ordained minister, the first convert and the first ordained minister. And his siblings, there are about 4 or 5, or maybe at a time when it's returned to present it on the, maybe you see the photograph, so Simon Lamba Kakwe, he was the first convert and was the first ordained minister. And then his siblings, about 4 of them, 3 of them were pastors, the other one was a lay preacher, in that land. So with that, the work was also coming up. The natives were joining hand with the missionaries until they finally left. Cameroon Union is another one that I will consider here. The man that took Adventist message to Cameroon was said to be from northern Nigeria. Maybe part of those that were working with J.J. Hyde there. His name was Bactron of Reuben Bactron. That was the name, himself and his wife. They got to that place, and then they started preaching the gospel in a place called Dogba. It was not really easy for him. The same territorial agreement also affected him before he was able to locate or get a place where he located and started his own work. The work was also extending, from time to time. A very important figure in Cameroon there was a man they called Ekitike, a pastor. About half of the countries that we have in WAD, are predominantly Muslims, and that really affecting the rate at which souls are won. But at the time, the arrangement was made to begin something in Burkina Faso. And the method that they have there, just give me 2 or 3 more minutes. The method they have there was another very worth note. We have to take note of that. They didn't go with public evangelism immediately. They started with the earthwork. From there, they started on agriculture, and they established a school of agriculture. And the man also and his wife started giving gifts to the natives. And with that, it was winning their hearts. And then the discussion, started. Bit by bit, they continued until they were able to establish a church over there. So, say as at June 30, 2023, maybe this is talking about the WAD. So, as of June 30, 2023, WAD had membership of 959,849 and had 5,210 churches. I want to say this in conclusion, that our pioneer was so passionate. Their desire was everyone that was willing and ready to hear the gospel should be reached with the gospel. And that is where we also, as individuals, we should join hands together. As a gratitude to the activities of the missionaries, in Nigeria today we have the Babcock University, maybe one of the largest institutions that we have in Africa, named after Babcock himself. And then the Clifford University in the eastern part of the country was also named after Clifford. While in the north, we have a secondary school that was also named after the J.J. Hyde. I want to say that the labor of our heroes will not be in vain, as my people will say. Think of the sacrifice that these people made. Think of lives that were lost. Think of a lot of inconveniences that they really put upon themselves. And I want to say, we join hands together to move forward where they stop, that we may also go together so that we can wholeheartedly declare to further the cause of God in the slogan that we have around, I will go. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you very much. We move on to the next presentation with Dr. James Mutua. Now, if you realize we have been from America to South Africa to West Africa, now we are closing the morning with East Africa. I don't know if it was purposely planned, but it so happened to be really fitting. Dr. James Mutua will be presenting the coming of Adventism to Eastern Africa in Kenya. Now, Dr. James Mutua is an ordained pastor and senior lecturer in theology in the theology department at the University of Eastern Bariton. He also serves as the director of the Ellen White Research Center at the same institution. Without any further ado, I will invite Dr. Mutua.
Good morning. I thank the administration for giving us this opportunity to share the development of Adventism in different parts of Africa. We have heard from the south, now from the west. Now we are going to hear from the east. I hope one time we will also hear from the north. Amen. And so my title here I chose is The Coming of Adventism to East Africa, and in particular Kenya. Successes and failings. When I gave the title, I gave my title, I didn't include successes and failings, because sometimes when we come to the history of Adventism here, sometimes we don't add a critique. Criticism is not always negative. There are negativities and also positivities. So we will look at how did the missionaries fare on? Did they fail in some areas, and did they succeed in some areas? And then we can draw some lessons from that to learn where we can succeed, where they failed, and also succeed more where they succeeded. So ECD, East Central Africa Division, comprises of 11 countries. And each country has its own Adventism entrance. And so if I were to explain and tackle everywhere, I think we wouldn't have enough time for this. But for the time being, we will look at Kenya. Of course, I'll give you the background, as my colleagues have done. Here we have Ellen G. White. Ellen G. White had a view of missions. And this is what she has. She views the Holy Spirit as the third person of the Godhead, as the power behind missions. In other words, the Holy Spirit is God himself and is the one who is behind missions. This is what she says. From the beginning, God has been working by his Holy Spirit through human instrumentalities for the accomplishment of his purpose in behalf of the fallen race. This was manifest in the lives of patriarchs. To the church in the wilderness also, in the time of Moses, God gave his good spirit to instruct them. And in the days of the apostles, he wrought mightily for his church through the agency of the Holy Spirit, God again. The same power that sustained the patriarchs, that gave Caleb and Joshua faith and courage, that made the work of the apostolic church effective, has upheld faithful children in every succeeding age. It was through the power of the Holy Spirit that during the Dark Ages, the Waldensian Christian helped to prepare the way for the Reformation. It was the same power that made successful the efforts of noble men and women who pioneered the way for the establishment of modern missions and for the translation of the Bible into languages and dialects of all nations and peoples. Right now, there is a concerted effort to translate the Bible, Ellen G. White writings, in many languages as possible. So Ellen G. White, that is her view of mission. She views mission in two ways. There is the domestic and foreign mission. Because sometimes you talk to church members and they think missions are just foreign. They don't think about their neighbor who is next to them. They don't think about their country or their region. is you are a missionary if you go outside that region. And this is not what Ellen G. White says. She views both as foreign and mission. Both are the same. And they are very important. And it is the responsibility of the church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, to view missions in the same way. So the SDA Church braced itself for missions with the third angel's message when they saw that they were represented by the movement according to Revelation chapter 10, verse 11. What does it say? It says, you must again prophesy about many peoples and many nations, tongues and kings. This is where the Apostle John was shown a scroll, and he was told to grab it and eat it. And when he ate, it was sweet in the mouth, but it was very bitter in the stomach, showing the experience of the 1844 disappointment, the great disappointment. The good news of the coming of Jesus Christ was really good news of the gospel. They were happy. They were happy to leave this world of wickedness and suffering. But when Jesus did not come in 1844, they were disappointed. In other words, the bitterness in the stomach. And also in Revelation chapter 14, verse 12, it says, here is a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. This is very famous statement. But when these Adventists saw themselves represented by these statements in the book of Revelation, they braced themselves for missions in order to give this message to the world. They also understood that the gospel of their missions must be supported by institutions such as churches, schools, hospitals, and the publishing houses. That is why we have today the approach. If you want to succeed in missions, you need to have these in the forefront. So they understood that. So sometimes we ignore the context of missions. And this is very important. Even when you study the Bible, even Ellen G. White writings, you have to look at the context. So we need also, when we study the Adventism history of Adventism, we need also to look at the context, because it's very important here. Adventism in East Africa and in Kenya in particular occurred on the heels of earlier non-Adventist missionaries. In other words, the Adventists came late. Adventist missionaries. There were missionaries, non-Adventists, who came earlier on, and they are the ones who kind of paved the way. Because when the Adventist missionaries came later on, they were being helped. And they were getting information about the land and the people through these other missionaries. And sometimes when we are doing missions, we Seventh-day Adventists sometimes, and it has been a characteristic, we go late. We find others there already. And sometimes we just fly over and we start our missions instead of also engaging those who have been there before to understand the context. It's very important. Johann Ludwig Kraft and Johannes Rebmann were Germans. They were missionaries to East Africa in the 1840s. In fact, Dr. Kraft is the one who came to Kenya, and actually is the one who, when he asked one of the tribes, the Kamba people, the name of Mount Kenya, they say in their language, Kenya is to brighten. So when they wake up, they see the Mount Kenya having some ice, and it is brightening. So he was asking, what do you call that name, that mountain? What is the name of that mountain? Because during that time, the Europeans were searching for mountains which have snow on top, because in the equator you can have snow, because they thought it was very hot. So these missionaries also, they had an aspect of explorership or exploring. And these Germans, they came, for example, Rebmann went to Mount Kilimanjaro and he was looking at the snow on top. Graf went to Mount Kenya and he came through the Ukambani line. And he was asking, so that is where we get the name Kenya from. And so the context is very important. You see the picture to my right here is Rebmann. And, is Graf. And the other one is Rebmann. This one, Rebmann is a little bit younger. And that was some of the characteristics of those guys who were coming to our country. The political context. The European powers carved Africa for themselves. You remember the Berlin Conference in Germany. It took place 1884 to 1885 because it was delayed. So in that conference, they divided Africa for themselves. You have the Portuguese, the Germans, the British, the French, and so forth. So in this case, Tanzania, which was Tanganyika, came under the Germans, while Kenya came under the British. So this is the beginning of the missions now. Non-Adventist missionaries, especially the Catholics and the Protestants, had already established themselves in these two regions, and elsewhere in Uganda and other places. So the Adventists, they come and find already their missions, but not from their own perspective here. You can see the picture here is these Europeans in Berlin, Germany. They are dividing Africa for themselves. European Union Conference, Ludwig Richard Conradi, this was a German of the European Union Conference. He secured a Seventh-day Adventist mission in Tanzania because now the Germans, they are operating in Tanganyika there. He secures this mission from Graf von Goes, the governor of German East Africa. In Berlin. So the leader of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Germany, he goes to the governor. And the governor gives him permission to come and establish Seventh-day Adventism in Tanganyika. John Ellis and A.C. Enns, Germans were sent to German East Africa, Tanganyika, from the European Union there. And they established mission in Pare Mountains. This is in Tanzania today. Then it was German East Africa in 1903. Our Seventh-day Adventist mission in Kenya now. I'm now focusing on the region of Kenya as we speak, because these other regions, they have their own kind of way the Adventism came in, but we don't have time to explain everything. Conradi was also keen in establishing Adventism in Kenya, as he had succeeded in Tanzania. So A.A.G. Caskolen. This was a Canadian, but he was working with European British Union conference, conference there. And he was sent with Peter Nyambo. This was a Malawian, African native. He was studying in England. Together with Caskolen, they were sent by the British Union Conference to establish SDA mission in British East Africa, and that is Kenya itself, in 1906. And so they were sent, but since the earlier missionaries, the SDA missionaries, they were already in Pare Mountains in Tanzania, they went there to gather some information and how they can also establish some missions in Kenya. So you can see the background is very important. These things, these missions did not occur without the context, because those Germans in Tanzania, they helped these guys here to have some information, and they can use that information. In fact, when they went to Pare Mountains, they didn't come to Kenya immediately. They went to Pare Mountains and they consulted with those friends there. And they secured a company. In other words, they got a German who was working in Tanganyika, in Pare Mountains, called S.C. Enns, as we have seen. And they went back to Mombasa, so that they can have now an entrance to Kenya. And Mombasa is a coastal town in Kenya. Of course, the railway line had already reached Kisumu on the shores of Lake Victoria on the other side, western Kenya. So there was a communication line already in 1906. This railway line had been constructed and it was complete. It had reached Lake Victoria in 1901. So after 5 years is when these missionaries are coming, and they already found railway line. So they are using the railway line. They came to Gendia in Lake Victoria and established SDA mission there in November 27, 1906, among the Luos, the Luo people of Kenya. And if you are a Kenyan or you are familiar with Kenyan population, the Luos, they got these messages earlier on, and other tribes who got the message earlier on, like the Kisis, and others, they are quite ahead in terms of education because it was introduced earlier on during this time. Okay, this is Caskolen. He has his wife here, and you can see the boat he used. He contracted a Danish guy to build this boat, so that he can be plying across Lake Victoria and carrying some of the materials for building. I don't know whether you can see it. The one with the hat is Caskolen. You can see some natives there, and it's very interesting to go back in time and see how these missionaries were working. Of course, when the whites come to Africa, they are much more interested in looking, visiting wildlife. Sometimes it's very interesting. You can see someone is very much concerned with a warthog more than the native. They want to see the elephants more than they want to see you. How can we learn some lessons from that when we are doing mission? Are we concerned with the people, or sometimes we want to tour? All right. You can see here Kaskalan is having some trophies. Elephant tusks, rhino tusks, antelope horns, and all that. You can see he has killed also this gazelle or something. Is this something, when we are doing missions, we need to engage as Adventists or something? That's a question to answer yourself. Kaskalan's observation. When he came, I would like you to pay some attention to some of these statements. Don't think I'm criticizing just for nothing. I'm just giving you some critique when we come to critique how they were doing. This is how he observed. Thank you. This is the observation. When Kaskalan came to the Luo people, this is what he observed. And he writes, on entering this country, we find the people ignorant, naked, and living in a very low state of civilization. Their minds are filled with false ideas and superstitions. Their customs and laws forbid leaving their old ways for anything new, but do not apparently forbid conforming to anything for the sake of worldly gain. That is what he observed. And I would like to you to pay attention when you read. This is the letter he wrote, The Needs Among the Kavirondo People. This is the name they used to apply then. Construction and Bible translation. The missionaries, Kaskalan and others, constructed houses. They learned Luo language, and they put the language into writing very, very fast. And they were aided by the Anglicans and Catholics. Because when Kaskalan was trying to translate the book of Matthew into a Luo language, he went to the Catholics, the Protestants, Anglicans, to gather vocabulary, the Luo vocabulary, which they had already experienced with these people, and that helped him to translate the Gospel of Matthew into Luo language. So don't despise those who have gone before you, even if they are not Adventists. They can help you a lot. He presented the translation to the British and Foreign Society, and it was accepted. It was the first of the Seventh-day Adventist Church of any selection or section of the biblical canon to be accepted by the British and Foreign Bible Society. That was something good. Grace Clark also translated the Old Testament into Luo language. The missionaries taught the natives how to determine and count up to the seventh-day Sabbath, because since they were not learned, they didn't know which day would be the seventh day. So they were taught how to count. You have 7 sticks, and when you go to sleep in the morning, you take away 1 stick, and that is 1 day. All right? So when it will remain 1 stick, you will know it's now the day of the Sabbath. All right? The day of the Sabbath. So it's very interesting. They simplified the complex doctrines. For example, those other missionaries, non-Adventists, the way they taught the people about salvation, it was complex. So these missionaries discovered to give people just simplicity. In simplicity, it would be nice. It would be nice. And so, for example, in order to acquire divine character of Jesus, what did they say? They taught simply, you live like Jesus, as he lived, abandoning wickedness. For example, smoking, drinking, and all that. The missionaries established other mission stations, for example, in Rusinga, Wire, Kanyadoto, Karungu, Kamagambo, and Nyanjua. They started printing press. The institutions we have said, they have to accompany this mission here. Kamagambo and the Nyanjwa Adventist schools in Gusii land were also established. So these schools, Kamagambo is now in the process of becoming a university. So it started from very far. Evanson, he put the Kisii language into writing. Aaron Awar, a Luo native, pioneered Adventism in Kuria land in 1823. So you begin to see, first we have the white missionaries in most cases, but later on now the natives, they pick up from there and they begin to expand these missions into their native fellow men and women. Nandi land, this is another area occupied by the Nandi people in Kenya. And we have David Sparrow. This was a South African Adventist settler, as we had from our friend here. And he came as a settler in Kenya because they were encouraged. These Europeans were encouraged to come and occupy good land, highlands, what we call the Kenya highlands. So they were encouraged to come, and he came, and he started distributing pamphlets to South Africa, Dutch, and speaking English settlers. Also the Europeans who are speaking English, they were encouraged to come and settle. So when he found them, he began to distribute pamphlets containing the Adventist message in that area, Nandi area. In fact, that is where University of Eastern Africa is situated. That is where I teach. Some Nandis got the Adventist message while in Sparrow's land. You can see the acres, 2,000 and 93,000. This is a big land which they acquired. And when you move away the natives, and you are also preaching to them Adventism, they begin to question. You have moved us from the land, and yet you are teaching us Adventism. How does it go? Is it contradicting? So when we are doing missions, we need to be aware of these things. Kipsigis area is another Nandi, Kalenjin speaking people on the southern side. National Sebe, this is a Kisii native, was the first native missionary to the Kipsigis. And already Kaskalen had established missions in Kisii and the Luo land. And now the natives in Kisii, they took up the mission to start missions in their neighboring natives like the Kipsigis here. And Paul Nyamwea, he became the first director of the Kipsigis mission. All right, so let's go to Luhya land on the western part of Kenya. And this was started by Chetambe, and this was a native Luhya. He initiated Adventism in Luhya land in the western Kenya. He donated part of his land. This is very common. When the Adventist mission come to a place, God touches the natives, and sometimes they give land, part of their land, to build churches, schools, or hospitals. So this is what happened here. So let's go to the East Kenya. Now we looked at the West Kenya. East Kenya, we have this man known as W.W. Armstrong. He started Karura Seventh-day Adventist Mission among the Kikuyu people. and they built a church in 1933. And they started Karura Secondary School, or SDS School. Now Karura is advanced now, and we have it running. This is the beginning. He was advised by the non-Adventist missionaries who were already on the ground to start a school if he wanted to win the Kikuyus into Adventist mission. Did you get that? They advised him, if you want to win these people, just start a school, because it's very hard to preach just the word to these people. You will win them if you build a school or a hospital, and that is why it's very important to integrate your mission using institutions. This is Pastor Armstrong. And then there is another community known as the Kamba people. That is where I come from. And Jeremiah Oigo. This is a Luo native, where the Luos received the message. Now they are trying to approach other natives with a message. Together with missionary Armstrong here, they introduced Adventism in Cumberland. In Massey area, 1934, David Kaindi was a colonial chief, and he donated a piece of land. This is a very common piece of land to build Mutitu School, SDS School. And now I understand Mutitu is now a college. You have a college there and secondary school in Boone Hills. And also in the lower parts of that region, you have another colonial chief who accepted Adventist message in his area with his family here. Then there is Embu SDA Mission, another community known as Embu people, and these were introduced to the message by a Kikuyu who had already received their messages, Benson, and now I think I will skip, go to Mijikenda at the coast. Charles Wright, this was a white missionary who introduced Adventism in Changamwe in 1935, and also they built a Meres Secondary School. So what are the successes? Because I've seen my time is running out here. There were successes with these missionaries. They built churches, and these churches gave an access to everyone, because children would go to church, young people, everybody, women and men, and people could approach God. Churches brought order in worship, because you have the schedule, you have order, and to worship God, you need order, because in heaven there is order here, okay? So they organized churches and gave a sense of identity here, because you feel you belong to a certain group. You own it. It's yours. I belong here. Identity is very important. It's very important. Churches brought unity and love. You could love one another and all that. Natives learned how to evangelize. As we have seen now, the natives are beginning to evangelize to their neighboring. Education brought knowledge, how to write and read. They could read now the Bible. They could write also letters. They begin to write other books. And it empowered the natives to run the affairs of the churches. In other words, when the missionaries left, the white missionaries left, now we were left with our churches. And who is going to lead? Those who have already learned. empowered the natives to secure employment in the church, private, and government institutions. That is why earlier on I said if you go to government institutions, you find more of these tribes, so to speak, in positions, in high positions because of this background here. And transformed the natives culturally and reduced the communities' strangeness. Because when the missionaries or the whites came, they found us in different groups. We were nations. When we looked at ourselves as different nations. But when they drew the borders, they put these nations together. And it was strange because you are not acquainted with the cultures and the way of life of other people. But when this came, now people were brought together. You are sitting with a different tribe, and you understand them better because of this. Publishing. They brought publishing houses, they built, and now I think my time is running out, but I'm about to finish here. Of course, you must consider some part of my time was stolen. I'm just kidding. Yes. This was part of information anyway. So, introduction of television and the radio media spread the message faster. Like translation of the Bible and spiritual prophecy into different languages. Health, treatment of tropical diseases. Natives were taught health and temperance. Hospitals provided employment and field work stations for the natives. These were successes. What were the failures or the failings? The whites, when they came, and I'm not negative here, I'm just observing where we could do better if we were in the same situation. The Seventh-day Adventist white missionaries viewed the native Africans as uncivilized. And thus, Christianity was a way of civilizing them. So they used some languages here, which was demeaning. For example, pagan, savage, primitive, degraded, heathen, illiterate, animistic, dark, ignorant, and naked. Of course, when you go to a mission field, you find the reality. You might find people do not have clothes on them, but do not capitalize on them. They are writing these letters to back home, and they are telling them these people are way below the expectation. No, when we do missions, we don't need to do that. We know the reality, but we try to love the people. The missionaries enjoyed wildlife, as I have shown you, hunting and killing all these animals, while you may not love the people themselves. Yeah. White SDA missionaries were reluctant to ordain the natives. It took 26 years. In 1932, to ordain the first Kenyan. 26 years. And you can think about that. I've been told my time is up. I want to honor your... Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. So we are going to call on the presenters to come back on stage. All the presenters, please, can we affirm them by clapping for them? Thank you so very much. So if you have your questions, I'm just going to call up Dr. Nganu to take this part of the program. Please.
We are missing one presenter. It's coming. Okay. Good morning to all of you. What a wonderful time we have had together this morning. How many of you enjoyed the presentations? I really enjoyed it. And I am so grateful that we can have this time. Please, if you have not written down your questions, we will pass mic around. So if you have questions, you can ask. And we have just 40 minutes for this. And so we will move very fast. Perhaps I should ask the first question. And my first question is for Dr. Moisi, Super Moisi. We saw the Jane Andrews raise dedication to a level that is unimaginable. Why do you think J.N. Andrews immersed himself so much in mission? What do you think was his motivation?
Thank you. First and foremost, I believe J.N. Andrews could rise to that level because he first immersed himself in the Word of God and made Christ his friend and understood the mission that God had called him to, that it was not in his power, but in God's power.
Can we shift one? I can see it. Thank you. Thank you for the answer. But do you think, a follow-up question, do you think we have people in our community with such kind of dedication, such level of dedication in these our days?
I probably would not say there isn't. I will say we all have the capacity to do so as long as we look at the text that I opened with, where Christ himself, Paul says himself, present yourself as a living sacrifice. So when you become a living sacrifice, God lives in you to the extent that you will do things that will even shock yourself because it's no longer you, but Christ doing it in one's life.
Amen. Thank you. Now, the mic is going around. May we know if somebody has a question? Any question? Go back there. Good afternoon. Good morning. Oh, good afternoon. Okay. Is the mic on? IT people, the mic is not on. Please help us. Okay.
And this is not long enough either. It ends right here.
Okay. Please go ahead.
My question is, I don't know whether we are biased because looking at the history of the mission in Africa and in many other countries in the world, it's all about men. Even actually the panel, does it mean that the women gospel Adventist history?
That's a very interesting question. All the presentation is about men, men, men. Don't we have any woman who really dedicated herself for the mission? Who would like to take that question? They are wrong. They are men, right? But they are presenters anyway, so we'll allow them to.
ministers or the missionaries?
The missionaries. The question was missionaries, right?
Now, but if you look at maybe some of the presentation, like for example, my own case, I mentioned the issue of Babcock, D.C. Babcock. I talk of his third wife, and I said definitely he did not marry three at once. So definitely there are, most of them have their wives accompany them into the field. And in most cases, in some of the cases, let me not say in most cases, some of them also have the role they play. They may not be preachers, but many of them are engaged in medical missionary aspects of the work. So definitely, you may hear of Babcock, yes, but was with his wife. The one that Reuben that also went to Cameroon was with his wife. He was also a nurse. And I think many others that will have an aunt. So there may not be a woman, and like Anna Moore, that I mentioned that started the message in Africa through the track that she read, was also a woman. So then I don't know where that question is coming from.
Yeah, I think as for me, I will appreciate the question. I think this is helping us that even in future when we think of such, we should also be gender sensitive.
Exactly.
And even as in our presentations. But I think in most of the presentations, we did mention, if you look at my presentation, I deliberately spent a bit of time on Mary and not on Charles. Because she really contributed significantly to the ministry. You look at the wife also, Angeline, she would follow the husband. He was hardly home. He was all over, just threw himself into the work. But thank you very much. I think we are all listening here, even the organizers of this meeting, that in future we should also be balanced. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you so much. Dr. Haschalinja, you want to add something?
In the team that was sent to South Africa in 1887, the Bible worker was a lady, but of course not much is written about her contribution. What I want to say is that while women were in the background, they were yet considered very important. Most of the missionaries who were sent out, they always insisted that they be married. And such was Ellen White's recommendation to Jane Andrews when he went to Switzerland.
They are in the background. And in my presentation, I've mentioned a lady who translated Luo Old Testament into Luo Old Testament language, and many others, those who are nurses. But they were kind of in the background because the man is the one who is dominating as a missionary.
Thank you so much. I think we got your question. The first one is women were not really mentioned. They were at the background. I think the second part of your question is, which Dr. Moesi also alluded to, next time we will be careful enough to include ladies also as presenters. Thank you. I saw a question, a hand here, then I'll come to you, Joshua. Or is it a follow-up to this question? No.
And if he's here tomorrow, he will see a lady presenting.
A lady presenting tomorrow.
Okay, thank you so much. Prof, I want to thank you for the wonderful presentation. My question is on the Peter versus Zambia, the SID presentation. We're told in that presentation that was one of the first converts, but they had a land that it was sold and then the money was used not in the south in Africa but even in Europe. My question is that when they just send missionaries, I believe they sponsor, then the presentation, the money now sent to the Europe was a kind of a reverse of the case. I just needed some why that. And then the second one is not a question, it's just a concern that if the presentation can be shared to some of us, maybe via email or so. Thank you so much.
Okay. I think I also had that question. Why is it that gold or something was discovered in the African continent and the money was realized from that, and part of the money was again sent to the Western world?
Thank you very much. Well, Peter Wessels was one of the first Sabbath keepers, if I may say, not converts to Adventism, but Sabbath keepers. And later on, when Adventism came, then they got baptized and became Adventists. Now, the going of money or the sending of money from South Africa to England, to America, to Australia, was not influenced by the General Conference. It was the Wessels family. They were a rich family, from that, and also they owned the farms. That was so dedicated to the church that they wanted to help God's work with the resources that they had. If, for example, the money that went to Australia, Ellen White borrowed 1,000 pounds, which was equivalent to $5,000. She borrowed, actually it was a loan that she got and was to pay back 4.5%. So because this money was available in this Adventist family and there were needs elsewhere, Ellen White borrowed and was to pay back, at a percentage. In connection with the land opening of Solusi Mission, Peter Wessels and his brother, I think it's John, while they were attending the General Conference in 1993 in Battle Creek, they offered 3,000 pounds, which was equivalent to $15,000, to assist in opening a mission in Rhodesia. And at some point, the same family also offered to the General Conference $15,000, dollars, but the General Conference declined to take that money, and so it was diverted to England because the General Conference did not feel that they should be, as it were, dependent on family finances in running its work. The church wanted to stay clean, to stay clear of utilizing family resources. So it was not the church that was actually sending the money out. It was the family that was dedicated to contributing
the money.
to the church's work. And in my area writing, I indicated that this was Africa's contribution to the mission of the world.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. A follow-up? Is it a follow-up question? No. I saw a hand. Yes, Joshua, behind them. And then from Joshua, we are coming to Professor Awuah. And then Professor Egwe, yes, and then you.
Thank you very much. My question or reaction is to what I think Dr. Mutua presented, and I saw a slight paradox in some of the observations you made. One of which is about when the white missionaries came. Part of the negatives that was observed is the way they view the Africans and the response they gave. Then that would, in my thinking, would have led to very low reception of the word because of those surrounding issues. But from the results, the first missionaries that came through the region, the Kisi region, and seems to be like those are the two that have the highest number of population as regards to Adventism. And now there was sort of some intra-missionary work where those that received from Kenya started taking to the locals, other locals. I don't have the figures now, but from what I know, the highest population is within the laws and the cases, and then others follow. So what then do you think could be the issue, or rather the reason, as to why the people, the tribes or the nations that were reached by the locals did not uptake this Adventist message as fast as those that received from the missionaries, the white missionaries, who you would have thought, because of the way they viewed the Africans, they wouldn't have taken the message as much. I don't know if I'm clear.
Yeah, we understand you. Dr. Mutua, do you understand?
Yeah, that's a good question, but I don't know whether I will be able to exhaust it, because, for example, I should say, when the Africans saw the white man, they thought he is a little bit superior because he's coming with education, he's coming with hospitals and all that. And his way of life is a little bit different. So you can see the Africans are receiving the message, not only Adventists, but also non-Adventists. Now, when these natives are approaching the other natives, sometimes they don't have the capacity like the whites. Maybe they are bringing just the word. They are not coming with hospitals. They are not coming with education and another superior kind of way of life. So you find, and also they are finding, the Adventists are coming late, because already the other non-Seventh-day Adventists have already established themselves. And if you know history, the colonial masters carved some regions. They say here, these are Anglicans. This area, this zone is for Catholics, and that zone is for Pentecostals and so forth. So when you are coming late as a Seventh-day Adventist missionary, you will find opposition. If we had time, I would have mentioned that. You find opposition from these established non-Seventh-day Adventists. So the message is kind of slowly grinding to that effect. And so, but it's still continuing. But already you find they have already established themselves in different beliefs. Even you find it today. When we Seventh-day Adventists, we go to a place, we come late, we find already they have acquired lands, and they have established, they have built schools, non-Seventh-day Adventists, and for us, we are just coming with the word. And it's very difficult from my perspective.
Okay, you want to add?
I just want to share wisdom from the readings about Andrews. One of the wise things that he did, why he impacted Europe so much, is that when he found another religion, you will find a common ground with them. Like when you go to England, you go to Switzerland, there were Seventh-day Baptists, and he made them friends, such that in their territory he didn't preach much. They would even exchange books and became very good friends. And they would even help him to find other places that were not reached, and then with the Adventist message. So I think it would be wise also for us, instead of promoting so much exclusivity and preserving ourselves, find a common ground as an entering wage, and then we can, I think, take it from there and reach other people.
Okay.
Thank you.
The last one on this.
Thank you. As Dr. Mutua has indicated, even today, where we consider to be unentered territories, you find that other Christian denominations may already be there. And one example was how Adventism entered the Botswana, Dr. Mwesi's country. Anderson, W.H. Anderson went there And then he was told, because the London Missionary Society was already there, they said, no, we are already Christians, so if you want to bring anything, you can open a school, but on condition that you don't preach. So with that arrangement, Anderson could not preach, for some time, and yet they wanted to, to plant the message there. And so they requested for a doctor. They asked the General Conference to send a doctor. And so the General Conference sent Dr. Krishma. And when he got there, again, he had to sign that he will do his medical work, but no preaching. And, and as he started doing the medical work with the royal family, and people became so interested in the successes of his medical work. And then they began to ask now, what are your beliefs? What do you believe? And because of the good work of the, medical work, they finally opened the door and said, no, you can preach now.
That is why we have the Kanye Adventist Hospital. Okay. I think we've had much on this. Let's give the mic to Professor Awar to ask a question.
Dr. Mutua, you mentioned that when Adventism went to the Kikuyu land, they said, bring education, bring schools. We are so focused in higher education. And we know very well that you cannot teach old dogs new tricks. Catholics make Catholics at the early stages. They even have their preachers, the Totomisas. It is very, very hard to convert them because they learn it as children. We are coming to a point from my observation where if you don't have a good church where your child goes to Sabbath school, where there are good teachers, then you miss it all. Because our school systems are not providing the kind of evangelism that we expect. And our system as a church, the leadership, is not keen about Adventist-sponsored institutions that are run by the government. We are not keen about that, and that's where most of our Adventist children go. So if we do not have children who go to church where there is a good Sabbath school for children, we lose everything. And in fact, I come from the Luo land. My home is just about 7 kilometers from Gandia. That is where almost, in fact, when I first went to that place, there was no business on Sabbath. Non-Adventists closed their businesses because nobody would go by. But things have changed. All shops are open and Adventists are buying. And everybody who was from an Adventist home has become Pentecostal and everything else in the village. Why are we losing Adventists, and what should we do? What should we do about our schools to raise Adventists who are real Adventists from the heart?
It's a challenge and it's a question also. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, it is a very complex situation. Thank you, Dr. Awar, for that. In fact, it's very sad because we are losing some of these Seventh-day Adventist churches. Because, for example, you might find the government is subsidizing education, or Seventh-day Adventists themselves, they think on the government or private sector, there is good education, the facilities are good. And when they compare with their own Seventh-day Adventist schools, it's like nothing. So they are tempted to take their children to these other schools. So that is one of the temptations. Another thing is we as a church, from the division level, union, conference, we have not emphasized on that aspect you have mentioned. And if we could revisit that aspect, then we would have a different direction. I don't have any magic bullet to answer that, but I think that's what
You say, but I think that question could be, it's a discussion on its own. In addition to our schools' quality or enrollment going down, we have another issue of now Adventists giving our schools to government to run. And not only that, even having the teachers and administrators being non-Adventist. So we are losing it. Probably it's a discussion, not probably so much into this. Okay, then you can answer. No, a follow-up question, then you can answer the two.
Yes, thank you, Prof, for raising that one and the word has been raised by Professor Agor. Yes, it is true, and Dr. Mutua has mentioned clearly that even when the missionary came to Karura, he was advised that you'd rather start school before you start a message. I'm wondering where the rain started beating us up. Because if you look at this context of Kenya and even elsewhere, there are many churches and schools. If you look at the panorama, or even the Rongai here and its environment, Kajiado, the whole range is all churches which started around 1990. We have created more than 50 churches and there are no schools. Where did the rain start beating us? Because the schools and the colleges that you mentioned, including Kamagambo, Nyanchua, and the rest, and including Karura and Boni, and all that, even Masi, were actually the invention of the missionaries. Which school was started by us, and we can say this is our flagship school that was started by our own, other than those that were started by the missionaries. That's where I'm concerned about it. Then before I proceed, Chair, because I have another question. Dr. Moel said that we'd rather continue messing up than missing the kingdom. You did not put a framework of which kind of messing up should I go on messing up so that I do not miss them. I appreciate that missing is, rather messing up is a lesser evil. But what is this that I should be messing up so that I can inherit the kingdom of heaven? Thank you, Chair.
Dr. Adetunji first.
It's okay. Maybe I think I agree with the question.
The mic.
No, yes, the idea that we are losing out, maybe like what you said. Because we focus more maybe on the higher education. As I've said, when you look at about 3 or 4 areas that I consider in my presentation, I don't think there's any one of them that did not include education, either as the lower level. Like in my place, if not for school, I know God has 1,000 ways of winning souls. If not for school, like myself, I may not become an Adventist. Because my parents were not Adventists. They are not Christians. Even my mother got baptized shortly before she died, but my mother did not. So it is easier to win souls when we get them at the tender ages than the higher education. But I think part of we don't see education as as a way to mission. I think that's one of the points. We focus more on the financial contributions that we have or gain that we have from establishing academic institutions. So to me, primary school is also very, very important. And as much as we can, we should also find a way of, bringing that in. Even if we've been beaten up somewhere for whatever reason, it is yeah, but maybe late than never. If you can incorporate that.
Thank you. You want to respond on the messing up?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Prof, for that question. You will notice that even when the church sent Andrews out as the first official missionary, they were not even too sure whether he was the right man to go, whether it was the right thing to do. He got there, he himself, he did the best that he could, but he learned through the process. So the whole idea is that if you stand there and say, I will not participate, you will never ever learn. And secondly, you will never know what it means to grow from where you are, from your failure to success. So the whole idea here is that as we are here, that was my appeal to each one of us here, that as we have a slogan, I will go. Let us go, because we will never know until we go. It's better to go out there and mess up than miss out on being used by the Spirit of God to be a better Christian.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Dr. Hachalimba.
Let me just make two responses to the earlier question about schools. I think Ellen White recommends that there are 3 institutions that should be interested in the raising of children. That's the home, the school, and the church. And at the level of children, I think the mention of Sabbath school is very important. What we do for the children there, and the school and the home all must work together. When it comes to J.N. Andrews and his contribution, I think I want to borrow from Dr. Mutua's presentation where he talked about criticism or critiquing our presentations or the work of the missionaries, and also Dr. Mwesi mentioning that it's better to mess up than miss out. In a recent biography on J.N. Andrews by Valentine, he evaluates Andrews' dedication, by saying that he was driven by a sense of duty. When others were moving to Battle Creek, J.N. Andrews remained in a place where he was near a university, because he was
Rochester.
He wanted to dig more and more, and many can be said, many things can be said, and look at the sacrifices he made. Even in leaving his family, his wife who have miscarriage, he is very far, and she would be alone. She's sick, he had this dedication almost like Paul, and. Now, when you look at that, and you bring in a recent presentation I listened to by our Ellen G. White Research Center Director from Australia, who was evaluating at the sacrifices made by James and Ellen White. When you look at the picture of James White at 60, just before he died, and you look at some of us who are now above 60, you feel like I haven't done anything, because James White was looking like an old man at 60, all because Ellen White says he was doing the work of maybe 3 or 8 people. And yet, in later writings, Ellen White reviewed their sacrifices, and she indicates that they are not to be recommended as examples for people to follow. Some of the sacrifices they made were unnecessary. Leaving children for months and even years, pursuing mission. So I think high evaluation was that don't copy because we did it. Some of those were lessons that we are now realizing that they were not necessary sacrifices. So we should not just take wholesale and say, I want to, like You know, we become fanatical that way. We have to really go back to Ellen White would say, use common sense.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, we have 5 minutes. I can take only 2 questions. I see Kokwe and Professor Nwama. 2 questions, only 2 questions. But before those questions, you have something to add?
Yeah, it's something I wanted to draw our attention to. And you know how the church works. The church is supported by funds. Even you can wonder how Jesus Christ and his disciples, how did they support themselves? They were not getting money from the temple. In fact, they were opposed. But you wonder how the women who are going around with them, they were providing. So the church gets tithes and offerings to support its mission. And if these are low, then the schools, hospitals, and everything else is low. So that is where the rain started beating us. If we could give, we could raise this. It's like Dr. Achalinga was saying, these vessels, he donated some of this money. That's how some of these institutions were started. But if we don't have money, then we will have a little thing to accomplish.
Thank you. Pastor Kwekwe?
Thank you all for the presentation. I'm Kopre from the West African Union. I think one of our strengths in that union is education. Most of our churches have organized schools. I have a few questions here. For the time Adventism began in Africa up to this time, can we say that the church is growing? If no, what are the obstacles? The second question is mainly to the presenters from White and ECD. When the guy was teaching, they said they don't have enough time. For example, White got 22 countries or many unions, and ECD got 11 countries. They don't have the time to really touch other unions. But I thought that they spend more time on their respective countries than touching other unions. Don't you think the next presentation would be better to balance the history of our missionaries from other areas? Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So, did you get the first one? Can we confidently say that Adventist in Africa has grown, looking at the inception of the message? If yes, what is making you say yes?
For me, I would say yes, because we have statistics, we have the data. So far, what we have accomplished. But for me, I didn't present the latest or the current so that you can access. The next question is...
balance in the presentation. Not, he realizes an observation he made, so that one I think we can...
we can skip.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I would say statistically, yes. I still am concerned that, yes, statistically we are really growing, maybe even up to 50% of the world membership. But that is quantitatively. What about qualitatively? For me, I'm looking forward to a time where even Africa will also contribute to the General Conference as it has been done before, because it's very clear that Africa is rich. Could it be that we still have the same mentality that it has to come from the West? Then that's when it's a thing of quality. So I think quantitatively we are doing well. But qualitatively, when you look at our numbers and our tithes and offerings, do they really tally or not? So I think there's still a lot we need to do within than what we see reflected on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, like the issue of performance. I believe there are some obstacles, and like what I also mentioned in my presentation, in WAD, religion is one of the major obstacles there. You know, like the majority of those that we have in Sahel, East and West, majority of the countries there, you know, are Muslim-dominated areas, and that's very, very, difficult even to reach out. Even the Burkina Faso, where we enter, I try to outline the tactics, the methodological approach is that those that went there, that they didn't start with evangelism. They started making contacts, medical work. I even the one that went to Cameroon started with gifts before they established schools and the medical work, things like that. Then the other one, they are there of, like what I said from the Maxwell that wrote Tell It to the World, that in every union, in every country, we have somebody like Joseph Bates. And within the time given, it's not possible to cover all. I want to tell you that within this period, when I received this invitation, I didn't have many of this material with me. I sent messages to some of these unions to see if I can get some material. So where I have sufficient material, I dig sufficiently. Where I have sparsely, available material, I could not manufacture things for myself.
Exactly.
That
okay.
what really happened.
Thank you so much. Dr. Hachalimba, very quickly.
Yeah, well, on account of really we could not be exhaustive in our presentations, but the information is available on the encyclopedia of SDA. Articles on the beginning of work in almost every territory is found there. Thank you.
Okay, last question, then we are done. Take the mic to Dr. Mwama.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I want to, I think Dr. Wachilinga gave part of the answer to my question, but I'd like to still re-emphasize. When the presentation was presenting, he mentioned not less than 6 or 7 wives that died. If you want to count all of them, more than 6 or 7 wives that died. And that also reflected in another presentation, especially for Jane Andrews. Don't you think that reflects a challenge of balance between mission and family? I see that they were so passionate about mission, but at the neglect of
their wives.
Of family. So, and I think that's why I say you gave a partial response when you refer to it while saying that don't copy us. Because I'm not sure it's just coincidental that only the wives were dying and the children. So I think what do you have to say on that? Or was it that the men were more resistant to malaria? So don't you think that actually shows something about the challenge between balance, mission, and family?
Dr. Chalinga, you want to respond to that? All of us will say something. Let's begin from you. Or if you are not ready, you can say pass.
I'm not ready.
Okay.
No, I don't know whether I don't.
Just
think,
2 minutes. I
don't think all that died were all wives. We also have men among those that.
Those who died in the mission.
Yes, that's what I mean. Not all of them are wives. Not all of them are wives. And I also want to say, when it comes to death, I don't think. Yes, I agree with you. That can be a factor, but even if somebody is so careful, a little thing can claim the life. And let's also understand that these people are getting exposed to new environment. Like Babcock, I wonder how he survived in Eromo, how he survived in Shao, where there was there's no. Babcock had to dig a well for himself, that was using. So it is not impossible. But I also say men sometimes may also be maybe more rugged sometimes than women. Let's just look at it as maybe that is the way God designed it, or it happened. Yeah, we can have, that may have factor, that may be contribution, may contribute to it, but it may not all be out of carelessness.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Moesi.
Yes, I agree with the previous speakers that it's not only women. Ellen White lived longer than James White. That's a clear example. And probably, of course, many others. However, I think one thing that we should also take a leaf from here is that, remember, these people, the Lord found them where they were. They were learning. They were growing even in their experience. Even the prophets themselves grow in their experience to know God. Even today, if I come here and present, and I'm presented as a pastor and whatever, my first missionary place is my family. Unless my wife and my children themselves can testify that this is a man of God, whoever says that is just a lie and it's a fallacy. So I think important today that we have that balance even in this time and day. Most of the things that we learn as we read from Romans chapter 15, verse 4, all that was written for our admonition, that we who live in the time of the end, we might have hope. So from those experiences, we can learn and strike a balance because we have both worlds.
That's it. Thank you. Last comment.
I would look at it differently because I look at it from the view of context. Context matters here. I'll give you an example. Ellen G. White and her husband, James White, when they were told to print a small paper, they didn't have money. So James White found some casual work, cutting logs, grass, so that he can get money. Because they didn't have the organization like we have today. The church. They were just very small, they were poor. So James White engaged in that work, and that exactly what brought his death. He had a stroke because of this work. So the context matters. When you don't have a system to support you, you do whatever you can, and sometimes you can overdo. But today we have the church. Someone else can come in. You can take turns, and then you can relieve your family. But when you are alone, and is you and you alone, I think sometimes it happens. It happens. So we need to wake up, and every church member should wake up and realize this is the responsibility of each believer, and relieve one another. We love one another and help one another. Yeah.
We want to thank our panel members, our panelists so much. They have done so well. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. And thank you for the presentations. I will invite the moderator now.
There's a difference between sacrifice and suicide. I think that's the balance.
Okay, we are going to stand for prayer, but before we stand, I think Professor has an announcement to make before we pray.
It's not an announcement really, but we have a group of about 50 people are coming to visit us at the AUA. Unfortunately, we will have left, but they will be here from 3 o'clock just to visit us and create awareness of marketing and trying to see how best, because they are from a camp center. But there is part of it is a big group of choir who will be here up to around 5:30, latest by 6. Those who will be interested, they will come. They may come and listen to music, but at that time we will have started our program. So welcome from 5:30.
Okay, thank you so much. We're going to stand for prayer unless Devisi, you have something? Yes, this evening we start back at 6:30, and then we continue tomorrow morning at 9:30. On the same theme, of course, the 150 years anniversary. And then after the prayer, we'll just have the presenters for a picture, correct? Okay, very good. So let's bow our heads for prayer. Loving Father, we are so grateful to you for having been with us throughout the presentations. We've been reminded of our history, and we thank you, dear Lord, that you've been with us throughout this past, and we hope and believe that you will still be with us as we try to finish the work. Bless every presenter and bless the listeners as well, and bring us back safely in the evening at 6:30 or a little earlier for the choir to sing. We thank you that we have enjoyed your presence, and as we go, Lord, send us with your blessings and bring us back safely. In Jesus' name. Amen. All right, now I think we are dismissed now. And then the presenter will stay back for a quick picture. All the presenters.
Then we can bring, because if we stand here, this time. Wait, yeah, let's